Hello everyone, welcome back to the Aurelia city in City Skylines. Just like in the previous builds, today we will revisit an old place started a long time ago so we can finally complete it. It's going to be the city area on the edge of the upper lake, right in front of the island city, which is of course that orange star thing in the water. We will fill the empty spaces that you can see on the left with more buildings, and we will also do some major changes to the terrain by making the lake much bigger. So the open space you see here in the upper center and right part of this view are going to be water after today's project. And also we will put the highway you see on the right into a tunnel, which is going to resurface on a new island. And then it's just going to continue on a bridge that we already have there. But you will all see that in the time lapse, so let's get into it. We're going to start building on that small roundabout that you can see on the right, on the edge of the park. So I really thought that today's project is going to be all about this roundabout, and we are just going to complete it, build some kind of a plaza. We also need to do a train station here. It's going to be basically a transfer between the trains and the trams here. But I really did not have any ideas whatsoever for this place. I do now, but I didn't when I was building it. So I finally decided that we are just going to only prepare some infrastructure here. As you can see, I'm just altering the shapes of some of these tram roads. The direction of the tram is then going to continue like perpendicularly away from the park into some of the more recently built waterfront areas. And we are also going to build like a sports center, like a big dome on the edge of the lake. So that's going to be the main focus. But right now, I really wanted to just prepare this infrastructure because I really do want to have the trams already going into those new places. And we will also do some kind of detailing and building on the sides of these tracks, the train tracks. So we also need to have them set in their final position. Now I have to apologize because I did not record me building this bit in here, but it's not really that complicated yet, so I'm just going to quickly describe what happened there. So I just copy-pasted this like a quarter circle building, kind of mirrored it in there, and in between that I created this tram loop. I obviously used heavily the node controller. I made sure that these tracks are nicely going away from that main avenue. This is of course the main avenue that we have seen on the other side of the city already. It's the same kind of road. And then I also placed that Astrodome building right there on the tip, and it's all going to be surrounded by water, so that's going to look quite nice. Okay, so back into the time lapse, and what I started doing in here was actually something super satisfying. I really enjoyed this bit. So I was just doing lots of these different fillers inside the intersection, of course using the intersection marking tools. As you can see, these kinds of big asphalt surfaces are not really looking all that big, or sorry, not looking all that great, and I need to make them much smaller because, you know, they are not going to be used anyway. These intersections are actually kind of tiny. I only have one lanes going into these different directions, and all that matters in here are obviously the tracks, the tram tracks. They kind of need to look good. So I really want to just limit the asphalt spaces that we have over here. I kind of want to keep the place a bit greener as well. So these kinds of large surfaces with the asphalt are just not going to look that great. And I think that this was probably the first time in the city where I started using the intersection marking tool also on the segments, as you can see here. And it turned out looking really, really good, like highly customized area. It's eventually became. So that's just great. That's just absolutely great. And I'm using all these kinds of different roads in here, and then I'm just basically taking only the lanes that I need from them. So right there, for example, I think that's like the 3+4 lane road, but I'm just going to only create like a huge median in the center so that it's going to just nicely continue the geometry of that tram avenue that we have seen before. So as you can see, even doing these kinds of entrances into the tram loop with the asphalt, or sorry, with the pavement on the sides, kind of continuing the sidewalk. Oh, and yeah, this was the continuation of the big median. Now you can also see that there is a bus on the road. Now this is actually a live bus. I just have the game paused, but there is a bus station. It's going to be like a loop, little loop for the buses as well. So the bus is only going to stop on one side of this road. And I'm going to build like a cute little bus bay for it with the red marking on the road, just like we did. Oh yeah, this is it. Just like we did on that bus terminal a couple of episodes ago, for example, or actually a long time ago. I keep saying that. But yeah, I just like it. I just like these different colors, this combination of the small asphalt lanes in between these large grass medians. I really do like how this turned out. And obviously, this would have been completely impossible if not for the intersection marking tools. Or I suppose it might have been possible with props, but it would have been a real pain to set all that up. All right, so this was something that took us a long time on the streams. If you've been there, then you probably remember that. But I think the results are really, really worth it. Now, these kinds of tram avenues, they have slight disadvantage. You actually do need to use the ploppable asphalt surfaces on the intersections. Otherwise, they have these like really dark black or completely black surfaces in there. Also, you have to paint over the crosswalks, the original crosswalks, because if you just destroy them with the node controller, they kind of have some kind of mangled texture underneath them. So it's best to do it this way. Now, I'm just going to continue doing the same detailing like I did this long time ago when I was doing that first quarter circle building and all the planters in front of it and the keys and everything. So this is, again, just like we did in the previous episode. I really want to just continue doing some of the detailing areas or detailed areas. I want to really do that with the same styles as before, so that these places are really going to look very similar. You're not going to even notice that there is like this place was built, I don't know, years ago and finished today. You're not going to notice any kind of seams or something like that, right? Because I'm just going to use exactly the same styles. So copy pasting some of the areas definitely makes sense in this regard. Now we are finally going to see what I meant by those major map changes and the terrain changes around this place. So the dome is just going to be on this little bump from the waterfront area. It's going to have the same keys as before. These are the stone keys with the very nice fences. And all around it is going to be just water. So the dome is actually going to be a much more distinct building in this area. Just going to notice it right away, just like you notice the island city, for example, because it's just going to be surrounded by a completely different color, obviously the water. Now, I'm doing these kinds of flattening of the map all around this area because, why not? It's going to be that way anyway, so might as well do it right now. But there was the highway in the way. It was not exactly going all that high because the highway is actually kind of sunken below this new level that I'm setting for the waterfront. So I needed to figure something out. And I remembered the real life place, the Øresund bridge, the Denmark-Sweden bridge, where they actually have something similar. I'm not exactly sure why they did it like that. I think the reasoning was that there is an airport nearby, so they didn't want to build like a big bridge structure near the shores. So they basically put, or was it because of boat traffic? I'm not exactly sure right now. I think it was the airport. Whatever. The point is, if you've seen that, then you know it. The highway is just going below the sea level. It's not really that deep at that point. And then it's just resurfacing on this artificial island and continuing on a bridge. So that's exactly what I wanted to do here, because I am planning on doing some kind of a boat traffic near that new waterfront, and the highway, it would not really leave very much space, like clearance below it, because it would need to be super steep anyway to just reach at least the water level, and then it would just need to climb some more. So this was much better alternative, to just not have the highway at all and to just resurface it, somewhere inside the lake, which is also going to provide a nice opportunity to just create some more landscaping in the river, in the lake, and create some kind of, sculptured like rocks and everything. I'm not really going to do that today. This shot is very important, and this is actually going to tell you how exactly it's going to continue. So, for example, in the previous episode where I did that third level, the upper level behind the dam, that's exactly going to connect to this lake. So this lake is going to be even bigger. We are going to keep making it bigger, and this is just going to form the edge of the city. And this kind of leads me to mentioning that, and you can already see it in that previous shot, you definitely could have seen it, that there really are not that many places left to build in the Aurelia project, in the entire city series. So I think that it's going to take us maybe 3 to 4 more building episodes to actually finish the entire thing. I unfortunately wasn't able to really squeeze it into 100 episodes. It's gonna be a bit more, but I don't really want to rush it. These kinds of areas, I would really want to have them detailed a bit more. I would really like to play with buildings a lot more, because this waterfront is going to be super visible, okay? And we are obviously not just going to do the building episodes, but we are also going to do some kind of a final showcase of the entire city, maybe some couple of rides still, and these kinds of things. Oh, and I also promised some kind of like a public transport overview that I would really like to do in the series as well, okay? So don't worry, it's not going to end just by the building, but we are going to see Aurelia some more. But anyway, let's now focus on what's happening over here. So all of these places, this general area is basically like a medium to high density residential place. It has this train station with the line that's going to the island city right in the middle of this place, and then it has all of these blocks of buildings around it. Now, like I mentioned before, I really do want to continue the trends or to continue the styles that I already set in this area. So for example, these kinds of blocks with these buildings. Now, these buildings, they are just two kinds, but I'm using kind of clipping between the buildings to create different kind of blocks, different looking blocks. At the end of the day, they kind of remind me maybe of some like slightly improved, the Eastern European or Central European housing areas. And maybe that's exactly what I was aiming for. I wonder if I mentioned that in that, episode where I was building this years ago, but I suppose I did, because it kind of reminds me of it. Anyway, as you can see, I'm heavily looking into those old areas and just copy pasting or creating from scratch these places, but I'm really trying to keep the style very, very similar. Oh yeah, as you can see, I'm, for example, checking there how I did these underground parking garages and how I did these paths running through the area. These blocks need to be super flat, by the way, otherwise these paths are not going to work. And the way I did it before is that I basically just painted this entire area with the surface painter into pavement, and then I just used the ploppable grass to just put it underneath it and create these very artificial and kind of manicured areas of the grass inside. Also, I'm putting these kinds of like tennis courts or basketball fields in here, and lots of these little details here and there. The paths are going into the buildings, to the sidewalks and all that, so it's all looking rather okay. Now, the rest of this area is going to be filled mostly with some random expansion of mostly medium density housing. As you can see, still in Aurelia, we do have high demand for residential, and I kind of do want to do something about it. I don't want to just leave the city with this much demand, even though this is kind of the preferred demand situation. I suppose it would have been a bit worse if I had high demand for jobs, for example, because we are pretty much done with, we're definitely done with industry. We might build a couple of offices, maybe a couple of shops, commercial buildings, but we are mostly going to be doing residential on this waterfront. So it's a good thing that we actually do have demand for it. And it makes sense. It makes complete sense, because if you think about it, Aurelia was all about doing the city center or doing the high density bits in the center, and those were mostly filled with office buildings, which is, kind of realistic as well. But even in the game, most of the fancy big buildings are offices, are actual offices. So it definitely makes sense that Aurelia is very, very job heavy, let's say, and not exactly like residential heavy, even though you can probably see and compare the population count with the couple of previous episodes, because in the previous episodes we really seriously increased the population of the city by building all those residential places, even though we did some low density, so not that many people there, but still, it increased by a lot. And actually, when I was recording cinematics for today's episode, I really had to wait until all the traffic clears, because all the vehicles were just moving into the city, blocking all the interchanges, because I'm obviously building with the games paused all the time. I'm not really sure, it's kind of like a habit that I picked up. It's not really necessary, but I suppose it kind of dates back to those days when I still didn't have certain mods that would prevent certain growables from disappearing. So I kind of learned to just play the game paused so they won't. And then I just prayed during the cinematics that they won't really do that. So eventually the city series is actually not really, like, there is not that much time passed in the actual game, because I just play it on paused all the time and only unpause it during the cinematics. And there is always that kind of little paranoia still when I unpause the simulation, like, what if something goes wrong? What if the entire city just burns down? Okay, anyway, let's leave that and let's talk more about what is going on here. So I'm preparing this waterfront. Now, don't worry, the waterfront is not gonna be this straight. I really am planning some kind of little bumps, similar to the Astrodome place in here, but much smaller. So the Astrodome is just going to be the main dominant here, the main focus on, and it's kind of the corner of this entire waterfront area, so it makes sense that it's the largest. But I am definitely not going to keep the waterfront this straight, this flat, okay? Yeah, I definitely want to have it more interesting, because even the overall shot of the entire city is just not going to benefit much from these straight lines, okay? But that's all going to be for the future project, for the future episodes. Now, we are going to detail some of the plazas in front of the Astrodome and also that tram loop, because that's going to require some really nice place, really nice open space. Now, I'm thinking that the tram loop is obviously going to be there, or is there, to mostly serve this dome, because this dome is like a sports area, concert, something. So, thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people will have to go into this place. I didn't really provide any kind of parking garages or something like that. I'm just thinking that public transport is going to be, enough. Later, I'm thinking that maybe I'm going to put a second tram line into this area. I'm not yet sure. I'm thinking of maybe creating like a short tram line that's just going to go along this waterfront, and it's just going to end here together with the other tram line. Now, the other tram line, the one that's going in here right now, I'm not exactly sure where that's going. I think that's actually the one that goes to the airport. So it's quite long, and it's actually the first tram line that I built in the city, now that I think of it. And I was obviously just expanding it, extending it all the way across the river and stuff like that. But I think it's the oldest tram line we have built in the city, because it's the one that goes into the residential hive from the main train station. So that's definitely the oldest one in these kinds of parts of the city. Well, in the entire project anyway. So, doing this kind of detailing on the edges of the waterfront. Oh, by the way, I placed this Marco Knock building in here. I'm not really sure what it's called, but it just fits perfectly. This place, I really needs some kind of buildings that are not having those standard footprints, right? The 90-degree corner footprints, the box-shaped footprints, because I really do want to have this place a bit more organically shaped. That's kind of going to be a common theme for the rest of that waterfront, okay? So it's not really going to be that straight. Now, also doing some kind of details here on the plaza. I, for example, decided to use this globe in here, this statue sculpture, and surround it by those, I'm not sure what it's called. I think it's from real life. Again, some kind of a sculpture, artistic, whatever. So, around the globe, put it there. Why not? It's just, it's nicely orange, colorful. So it's just going to provide more colors into this place as well, which is needed. Now, the Astrodome building, it has these green surfaces around it, so I decided to just put some trees in there, some bushes, flowers later. And also I did a whole bunch of the park people's generators places, so that people can hang around the area. I suppose that I could have also used the the event generators around some of these roads, because the event generators are bringing in a lot of people, like big crowds of people. And yeah, I suppose I could have done that. It might have been looking a bit better, probably bring a lot more pedestrian traffic into the area. You can see that the road around the Astrodome is not connected to other roads, but there are obviously invisible pedestrian paths all around. Oh, and by the way, inside the Astrodome, I actually placed residential cubes inside of it. I know, residential, kind of weird, but they are just going to bring in some pedestrian traffic. Unfortunately, even car traffic, which has really stupid behavior. You might actually see that in the cinematics. I probably should not have mentioned that, but well, yeah, it happened. Now, I'm going to fill some of these blocks. Now, these kinds of blocks, I really wanted to have them not all that special looking and definitely not very tall, because the most special, the specialist building in this area needs to be either the Astrodome, probably, or that Marconoke building on the side of the waterfront area in front of the main road, okay? But these kinds of buildings, they should be fairly ordinary looking, not exactly all that fancy, but at the same time, they should maintain some kind of level of fanciness, you know? So some kind of medium fanciness level. And for this particular reason, I downloaded these kinds of schools buildings. I think these are 3 buildings in a set that I downloaded. They are, you know, elementary, high school, university buildings. And then I combined them with some of these, I think, Russian buildings that I recently got. And also, I decided to recycle this Dresden building, because the one that I used before for that sunken light rail station, but in here, it just fits absolutely perfectly on that angled road that goes from that intersection, because it just follows the shape. That's exactly what I'm really aiming for with these buildings. I'm really trying not to have that many 90-degree corners in this area, just like pretty much in the rest of the city, because I explained it many times before. It's just reinforcing the idea that the buildings were built, custom made, so that they are, or designed, so that they are going to fit these kinds of blocks and places, which is how it is in real life, and it's obviously looking so much better than just the 90-degree corners everywhere. Now, somewhere, yeah, sure, I'm going to do them because it's kind of inevitable, but, somewhere, if I can help it, I'm not going to do that. Also, I was extending these triangular, like artificial lily pads, because I really like them. I really like working with them. They are just a nice detailing piece in these on these shores, and extending them all the way to the Astrodome felt really nice. They kind of look like they are obviously artificial, like obviously no doubt, but they kind of look a bit random and a bit chaotic. They almost look like they just popped on their own in those areas. So that's kind of looking nice, and that's what I was aiming for. I was doing them really randomly, only did them on one side of the Astrodome, and it turned out looking good. And again, it just continues the trends that I already started in this area long time ago. So that's quite nice. Anyway, guys, we are now going to see the transitions, the before and after. Oh yeah, look at that. Look how the lake grew, and it's now just much bigger. But even in this shot, you can see that there are some places right there on the top of the screen that were just not done yet, and they are going to all connect together with that dam area that we did in the previous episode, and this lake is just going to be much bigger. The island is also going to receive some love in the next episode. We're going to just detail it with some trees, rocks, and everything. I'm kind of thinking of also making the island slightly bigger, maybe putting some kind of like residential buildings on it. It's going to be only accessible by boat, I suppose, but that's kind of like an idea that I may or may not do, but the main focus obviously is this place. Yeah, really like it. The Astrodome is on its own. It's not really a super interesting building. I mean, it's big, so that's interesting on its own, sure, but it's not exactly like colorful or anything. But putting it in this kind of a space, it's looking just absolutely amazing. By the way, I had to convert it into procedural object because it didn't exactly have that great looking LOD. I think the LOD just gets rid of that white part, the umbrella looking part on the roof. So that would be looking bad. So I converted it into procedural object so it doesn't have the LOD at all. It's just going to have the detailed model every time. And look at those lily pads, how they are just extending to all these different places. I really like that. Okay, so this is now the plaza for the tram loop and the bus stop. Oh yeah, I really like how the buses are using that dedicated lane for them. It's just looking so good. I should have also done one thing. I should have limited the speeds of vehicles going into these different segments around the intersections, because vehicles in City Skylines have a tendency to cut corners a bit when they are going faster. So it's kind of unfortunate with these custom paintings with intersection marking tools, but it's just a detail. At the end of the day, it's fine. And I just really like how I managed to cover all these big asphalt surfaces with the grass inserts in them, because It's just much better. It's just much better. This area is not really that super dense. There's obviously lots of green, lots of trees in these blocks, kind of filling all the open spaces. So it really makes sense that we also do it in here. Now that I look at this place, I probably should have put some kind of flowers perhaps on some of these medians or something like that. But, it's okay. I suppose it's fine. This is the overall shot of the entire place. As you can see, also the the elevated train track has that green stripe along it, so that's going to look quite nice. Anyway, in the next episode, we are going to return to that roundabout that we have seen in the opening shots here in the time lapse, and I'm going to finally complete it. We are going to build a new train station on top of it. We are basically going to create like a transfer station there, and we are also going to work on the waterfront. Now, next episode is going to be episode 100. I have to admit that I didn't prepare anything special because I thought I'm going to do some kind of cinematic, maybe, or, something like that. But since we are kind of nearing the end of the series, it wouldn't really make much sense to do like a total city showcase, just, 3-4 episodes before the end anyway. So we're just going to keep building. We're just going to keep building, which is kind of fitting, I suppose, for episode 100 because, the series is about building anyway, okay? So that's going to be the next episode. Next time, we are going to do some more changes to how the map looks like. We are just going to complete the lake. Maybe not complete it, but we are definitely going to extend it. We're going to do some fancy buildings on the waterfront. And overall, it's just going to complete this kind of view of the city much, much more. All right? So stay tuned for that. Thank you for watching today's episode. You can do the usual if you liked it. So put thumbs up below the video, write some comments, subscribe to the channel if you're new here. And you can also become a channel member if you want to directly support the channel, support what I do here. And big thanks to all the channel supporters that we have right now. Thanks again. Have a nice rest of the week and goodbye.